This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
You see a new name these days in Kentucky Afield magazine, a new writer behind some of those feature stories, and much of the talent he brings to Kentucky Afield, he brings from the baseball field. We go inside outdoors with Kevin Kelly, beat writer for the Tampa Bay Rays and the Cincinnati Reds. Now that Major League talent helps tell the stories of Kentucky's outdoors. Do stay with us because we have a fun show on deck on Kentucky Afield Radio.
My name is Monica. I'm 13 years old and I'm a good swimmer. I have the national top 10 ranking to prove it. So why would I wear a life jacket when I go boating? Because being a good swimmer taught me to be alert. Bunk can come undone in a second. You can be hurt, choking with the shore out of reach. No championship medal is going to save anyone then, but your life jacket can.
Kentucky Fish and Wildlife reminds you your life jacket's got your back, and the backing of boaters and good swimmers like Monica everywhere.
That fish weighed 10 pounds.
10. That's the magic word.
Honey, I hadn't been there 10 minutes.
If he says 10, he's lying. And he says 10 a lot.
You gotta be happy you married me.
I can hear it coming.
Admit it. I'm your perfect 10.
Honey, why don't you take 10?
10-4.
Your Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you, fishing's not about math. It's about fun.
And fudge it a little if you need to.
Kentucky Fishing. Be honest.
It'll make a liar out of you.
Some of my fondest memories are from when I was very young. They combined fishing with baseball, listening to the Reds on the radio, casting the Little Kentucky River, this is up in northern Kentucky, two very relaxing and engaging pastimes, subjects of which my guest today knows a great deal about. He is the newest writer for Kentucky Afield magazine. His name is Kevin Kelly. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And you've been a writer for the Kentucky Afield magazine now for how long?
I started here in December and came to Kentucky Fish and Wildlife from the Cincinnati Enquirer, where I spent about a decade there as a sports writer and news writer. Did a little bit of everything, and whatever assignments an editor could think to throw at me, that's what they did. So everything from sports to courts and crime and breaking news, but mostly sports.
It's interesting. I was reading in Kentucky Afield magazine, we'll get into this in a minute, that you started off an article talking about the Cincinnati Reds. Let me just read that first part. The skies over downtown Cincinnati explode with colors. The Reds treat fans to a fireworks show after a Friday night home game at Great American Ballpark.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kentucky is Reds country.
I know it is.
It absolutely is.
I remember one time on Kentucky Afield TV, this was 20-so years ago, I was doing a piece on Eagles, and I opened it with something from the Philadelphia Eagles. And somebody said to me, nobody's ever put the NFL on Kentucky Afield. And now you've got Major League Baseball in the magazine, and that stems from your roots in the greater Cincinnati area, northern Kentucky.
I came to the Cincinnati Enquirer from the St. Petersburg Times in Florida and covered Major League Baseball down there and helped cover the Reds and the Bengals for, from 2003 to about 2007. Did some traveling on road trips with the teams and that sort of thing. But, yeah, that was my focus for a number of years, was Major League Baseball.
I remember watching television shows like Lou Grant, that the life of an editor or a newspaper reporter, a writer, that's a rough road to hoe.
It can be.
What's it like in Cincinnati at that level?
Since we were talking about the Reds, I'll use that as an example. When I was helping out on the Reds beat, there were two people. You had John Fay, who was the primary beat writer. I was the backup. So I didn't take as many road trips as he did, but you would be on the road. Let's say each series is 3 games to 4 games each, and you have 2 series on a road trip. So you're gone a week at a time. And that can be difficult, and particularly after 9/11. Travel, is incredibly difficult. Getting to the airport early, getting through security, all that, and you're coming off, covering a night game, and you have to make that quick turnaround. There were a lot of sleepless nights You get back to the hotel and you have to get up early and get out of the hotel room early to make it to the airport to catch your flight. But
somewhere in there you have to write a story.
You do, yeah, absolutely, and because you're writing on deadline every day, so you are crafting your story as the game's going on. You're observing, you're writing things down, and you're typing on your computer, but you're creating a game story as it unfolds right before your eyes. But these days, you're also in the newspaper business, or even if you write, for foxsports.com or something like that, you're tweeting, you're blogging, you're doing all this other stuff that a traditional sports writer 20 years ago didn't have to do. So the job duties are that much more, and there's that much more attention or focus on getting things out as quickly as you can.
And to do this, I could easily see where you could go for the occasional home game. Mm-hmm. But were you on the road that much?
At times, yeah. You would cover essentially every home game. You might get a day or two off during the week. You would cover home games, and then the next morning catch your flight to go to Chicago or St. Louis, something like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So you were there. Like baseball or not like baseball, you had to go to the games. A lot of people wish they had that trouble with their jobs.
I love baseball.
I bet you do.
I play.
Were you able to meet some of the big names of the game?
Absolutely. When you're around the team that much, you get to know guys. I always had a fun relationship with Ken Griffey Jr., and I was there when he hit his 500th home run in St. Louis. I think I wrote 8 stories that day, something to that effect. But, he was just a lot of fun, and he would make you work to get to know him.
Well, what do you mean?
Once he got comfortable around you, he was just like one of the guys. You can, like we're sitting here talking, you could just sit here and talk to Junior like this. And it was fascinating. Sometimes I would catch myself, and you're sitting here and you're talking to Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah.
This guy's a Hall of Famer.
I put him right up there like with the Michael Jackson of baseball.
Yeah, and just that swing. Oh, my gosh, I love watching that swing.
It's a sweet swing.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice guy. Barry Larkin was great to deal with. I never had a problem with any of the players that I dealt with. And I think it helped just by being there.
Marty Brennaman.
Love him. Absolutely love him. They still do it today, but they invite a writer into the booth during the second inning. And it's basically where Marty asks you questions about what's going on with the team, gets your analysis, that sort of thing. But I remember when I came to the Enquirer in 2003, Marty and Joe were these larger-than-life figures to me, people I had grown up listening to. And to go into that booth the first time, you've got Marty Brennaman on your right, Joe Nuxhall on your left, and they're firing questions at you. And these guys know more baseball than I do. Even though I love it, but I have never been more terrified in my life than when I had to go in that booth with those guys. But they were great, and Nuxie was just a tremendous soul.
He was a legend.
Yes. Yeah.
There was no question about that. I saw on Facebook someone was showing a picture of him in his rookie baseball card. Mm-hmm. Oh, that was impressive. I got something here, Kevin. Mm-hmm. I keep it on my desk. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's not Cincinnati Reds, but this is a photograph of me with the Milwaukee Brewers. You're talking about being in the broadcast booth. I was a guest there with Bob Uecker. Mm-hmm. He played Mr. Belvedere on a TV show, I'm thinking, in the 90s. Yeah. And the gentleman there with Bob Uecker and me is named Jim Powell. Now, Jim Powell and I worked together at WIS, WVOC Radio, Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay.
And Jimmy went on to be the voice, to be the broadcast partner, Bob Uecker, in Milwaukee. Huh. I went to see so many Milwaukee Brewers games. So he said, "Oh, sure, you're going to be in town? Come on, I'll give you a free ticket." Yeah, and I chased the Brewers all over America simply because I wanted to see all the baseball stadiums in America, and did, with the help of the Brewers and Jim Powell there. That was pretty cool. Jimmy now, I call him Jimmy because I've known him since he was right out of college. He went to the University of Georgia. He's now the voice of the Atlanta Braves. And so it's nice to have a baseball connection with whatever you do, but I've always kept that here to remind me that they're there and I'm not. And I'm doing Kentucky Afield Radio, and they're doing something a step or two beyond that.
Well, they would probably enjoy this job as well.
I am very proud of anybody who can make it. I can say, I've met these people, I know them, just like you and Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah.
That you can be friends with somebody at that high level, the elite. We are talking to the newest writer with Kentucky Afield magazine, former baseball writer for the Reds. Great to meet the man behind the pen, Kevin. We'll have more. This is Charlie Baglin. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Charlie Baglin on Kentucky Afield Radio, and it's a show like this that our old friend Russ Kennedy would have just eaten alive. An old umpire himself, loves baseball, 2 sons in the business. I hope he's listening. He will enjoy this show. Kevin Kelly is my guest. You have seen his name in Kentucky Afield magazine. He's a fishing fiend, but has spent most of his life professionally in Major League Baseball as a writer. The Tampa Bay Rays in Florida, then many years with the Cincinnati Reds. Kevin, before the break, we were talking about players that you covered and became friends with.
Ken Griffey Jr. was somebody I talked to when my wife and I were expecting our first child, and just the amount of his advice and what he was like as a dad, and he would give me grief all the time, and it could be what I was wearing, if I was wearing the wrong thing, or if my shirt wasn't ironed just right. But I remember there was a time in spring training where I walked into the clubhouse, and I forget what I was even wearing, but he must have yelled right across the room, like, what is that? What are you wearing? And it's just all the players are looking at you. But
so we know that Kevin Kelly doesn't exactly have a fashion sense.
No, nobody will ever say that about me.
It's interesting to work in the type of profession that you have, because the access you get. Mm-hmm. We were at a National Archery in the Schools World Championship in St. Louis, and we held this in the same stadium where the St. Louis Rams played the NFL. Mm-hmm. But we had full run of that stadium. There was nobody there. It was the middle of the summer, and I was the lead announcer there, and I was also a photographer. When I was not on mic, I was out shooting pictures, and I got access to elsewhere in the stadium that nobody else was. It's interesting to roam around an NFL stadium, and there's nobody there. Mm-hmm. It's totally yours. Go to any seat you want, any aisle you want. It was unique. Mm-hmm. I'm not worthy.
It does feel like that.
And I trust it. You were able to roam around Great American Ballpark essentially at your leisure. Well, and see things, the locker rooms, and
oh yeah. There are places that the media was allowed to go that ordinary folks couldn't.
Sit in the dugout.
Bob Boone was the manager when I first started on the beat, but managers would do their pregame media sessions either in their office, which is attached to the clubhouse at Great American Ballpark, or in the dugout. So you would sit in the dugout and shoot the breeze with the manager and even players. You would talk to them in the dugouts or at their lockers in the clubhouse. But you would catch yourself at times walking through the stadium after you filed your story. It could be in Cincinnati or Old Busch Stadium in St. Louis or Wrigley Field. Wrigley Field was one that was just really cool to go to, because growing up, you watched him on WGN, and if you'd never been there, it's just a real historic place. And to see the Ivy, those places are neat, especially when they're empty, just when you think about what happens there.
What's your favorite hot dog in the major leagues?
Oh, Dodger dog.
Really?
Yeah. You
like the Dodger dog best?
Yes.
How about the Dome Dog at the Astrodome in Houston?
I had never gone, but I had been to Houston to cover a Bengals game, and saw the old Astrodome there, because I think that was right next door to the new football stadium. But I would have loved to have done that.
I have been to both. Minute Maid Park is now downtown Houston. Before that, Houston Astrodome, and that's right next. What's it? Reliant Park for
Reliant Stadium.
Reliant Stadium for the NFL team there in Houston.
Yep.
If you've ever been by it, and the last time I was several years ago, driving along from the interstate, you could see the Astrodome, which in its day was
the eighth wonder of the world.
It was huge.
Yeah.
But Reliant Stadium dwarfs it. Mm-hmm. Have you seen it? So you may probably Google it and find photographs.
Yeah. But still, I mean, the Astrodome was so cool. You know, it was ahead of its time.
Baltimore, the old Memorial Park in Baltimore. Now, maybe I'm thinking stadiums prior to 2000. If you've been to some of these, I'm thinking hot dogs is one of the reasons I go to a baseball game.
Hot dogs and peanuts. Those are my deals.
I would rather have a hot dog at a park than roast beef at the Ritz any day of the week.
Yeah, I agree.
The hot dogs at Memorial Stadium in Baltimore rocked.
Did they?
I'm not crazy about what they do to hot dogs in Chicago. They load them up with salads and everything else they can pile on a bun.
Yeah.
Prettiest baseball park in the majors. Which one do you think that is?
PNC Park in San Francisco is one that I really like. I'm partial to Dodger Stadium. I love Dodger Stadium, but the one in Pittsburgh, PNC?
PNC. Pac-Bell, is that what you're thinking about?
Yeah.
That was the original name anyway in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, yes.
Replaced Candlestick Park.
Yes.
That was a windy place, but this new stadium, not really new now, but in San Francisco, is the standard. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It's gorgeous.
Right there on the bay.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to get in a kayak or canoe.
Go out and catch fly balls.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going to guess you have been to every baseball stadium in the major leagues.
No, I have not been to.
Which ones have you missed?
I haven't been to Seattle, the new one in Minneapolis. I have not been to New Yankee Stadium or the new Met Stadium.
How about the new one in South Florida?
Nope, I have not been to that. But I have been to their predecessors.
So you got out of the baseball business about the time
the Reds
I did. About the time I did. Of course, I was just going as sort of a quasi-fan of the Milwaukee Brewers with my buddy in the broadcast booth. But I just wanted to say I've seen every baseball park, and I did. It's a moving target, Kevin.
Yes, it is.
You can't see them all because they're always tearing one down, going to build a new one.
Mm-hmm. Coors Field was one I've never been to. But yeah, it's like once you start getting close, it just moves a little bit further away from you.
It's really tough, but at some point you wind up saying, well, yeah, I've been to 2 in Detroit and 2 in Pittsburgh. I've been to 2 in St. Louis and 2 in, wherever, because you've seen the old one and you see the new one. Mm-hmm. And you say, I give up. Unless you're in the business like you were, there's no way to really see them. That's a lot of traveling. That's a lot of baseball tickets. That's a lot of souvenir caps.
A lot of hotel rooms.
That's a lot of $5 hot dogs. It's a lot of getting lost.
True.
It is frustrating.
What's your favorite park?
My favorite park, Pac-Bell Stadium in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. I think it was the prettiest in the major leagues.
Yeah.
As far as the old ones, I like Wrigley Field. Boston's Fenway Park is really nice. Mm-hmm. Baseball has such history to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You can track history just by knowing the history of baseball. Mm-hmm. World War II and Korea and Vietnam. It's amazing how so much of America is reflected in its game.
Mm-hmm. And there was a story I wrote on Joe Nuxhall when he retired, and that was kind of the tact I took on it was, 40, I think he spent 40 or 50 years in the game, and even longer than that, actually. But you think about what all transpired from a world perspective in that time through the lens of baseball player turned announcer. And it was just, the game has changed as the world changes.
And we got to bear in mind that this is Kentucky Afield Radio, and you work for Kentucky Afield magazine, mm-hmm. and your life isn't about baseball. Mm-hmm. But that is certainly your history. But there's something about Kevin Kelly that says, maybe I've had enough of chasing baseballs around the nation. Tell me about that side of you.
Fishing was always a part of my life, and my dad learned from his dad. My family's originally from Ashland and the Ashland area. You've been reading Kentucky Afield since since I was a teenager, maybe a little bit before then, but I just really believe in what this department does, and really admire the people who work for it, and from a magazine point of view, really respect the product and the history behind it, because I think it's a fantastic magazine. I really do, and I've always thought that. There are a lot of people who want to work here because a lot of people hunt and fish. Since December, have been really thankful for the opportunity, and I have no plans on going anywhere. So anybody who has designs for my job. You still live in northern Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be moving. The Fish and Wildlife headquarters and that magazine are both headquartered out of the capital of Kentucky in Frankfort. Yes. You're going to be moving. You told me earlier off mic that you're going to bring your wife, your 2 children, and your golden retriever. Our golden retriever, who's named Kippa after the Kentucky Intercollegiate Press Association, because that's where my wife and I met in college. So is she in the business? She was, yeah. She was a reporter at the Cincinnati Enquirer. She's now working at the Department of Education as a writer for Kentucky Teacher. Well, good for her. That's great. Yeah. So it looks like we'll be welcoming you. That's quite a drive every day from Florence to Frankfort. Yes. If you are 40, that's pushing it. How old are you? 39. 39. Yep. So you'll be here for the rest of your career. Let's hope. Knock on wood. As much as you love, obviously, baseball, you like the woods and waters even more. Absolutely, yeah. I can spend all day, all night. I just love on the water, in the water, around the water. And we will get to that side of things after the break. Kentucky Afield magazine writer Kevin Kelly is my guest. I'm Charlie Baglin. You are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. You can always find us on Facebook, of course. Just go to the search box and place these 3 words: Kentucky Afield Radio. Always love to get your comments on things and give us some show suggestions if you'd like. Kentucky Afield Radio on Facebook. Like us, and you will like us. It's time now for our fishing report.
Hi, this is Kevin Fry with your Eastern Area Fisheries Report. Heavy rainfall events are keeping lakes murky of late, and lots of floating debris to watch for on some lakes while boating. Most successful reports for larger bass or catfish are coming from depths of 12 foot or shallower. At Yatesville Lake, the best catches of keeper bass were usually from around 10 to 12 foot depth with crankbaits and plastics. Some keeper muskie are still being caught in the upper lake or river area of Buckhorn Lake. Lower lake areas at Buckhorn Lake, we're still producing some crappie by trolling small crankbaits over mudflat areas. If your local creek is not washed out of recent, there have also been scattered reports of decent rock bass action in deeper pools of water. Popeye jigs, grubs, and small plastics were catching some fish.
This is Tom with your fishing report from the Northeast. Cave Run Lake is cooled back into the 70s this week. Bass are slow and spread across the lake following the shad, but your best bet is at dusk fishing plastics on main lake points. Crappie have moved back off the main lake and into the river. Anglers have also been catching some catfish up the river portion of the lake. With the weather changing, Cave Run is heating up for muskie. Fish single or double-bladed cowgirls, believers, bulldogs, and large crump spinnerbaits in the main lake, specifically in the Clay Lake area. Anglers at Grayson will be looking at the largemouth falling schools of shad at the mouths of creeks and near deep cover. Fishing crankbaits under the schools of shad should do the trick. Finally, fishing is slowed in the green-up pool of the Ohio River due to rains in the last couple of weeks. However, where you find the shad, you will find the bass. Fish crankbaits in topwater near and around points and on the flats. That should do it for us from the Northeast. Wherever you go, good luck and stay safe.
Hi, this is John Williams with the Fish Report for Southeast Kentucky. At Lake Cumberland, striped bass have kind of been hit or miss. Do get reports of some early morning jump activity. Most of the stripers in the lower part of the lake near the dam. If you don't catch them in the jumps, you can try a little bit deeper. Some fish are deep, 60 to 80 feet deep, being caught on doll flies or currytail jigs. Troll with downriggers, also live bait if you can get it. Also hearing some reports of walleye being caught at Cumberland in mid-lake and lower lake. If you're around Conley Bottom area, around 30 feet deep. If you go down toward the dam, more like 40 feet deep. Being caught on main lake flats using night crawler rigs and bottom bouncers. And finally, on Rock Creek, trout are going to be stocked by the time you hear this. Rock Creek's a real nice creek in McCrory County, good camping area. Those trout can be caught on a variety of baits, including live bait, spinners, and small cranks. As always, good luck and good fishing.
From the baseball field to Kentucky Afield. More with Kevin Kelly after the break.
আইসক্রিম শেষ হয়ে গেল। বাচ্চারা আনন্দ তো মজার দিন ছিল। ও কোথায়? না, এ হতে পারে না। না না, আমি বিশ্বাস করতে পারি না। এ হতে পারে না। না না না।
In other words, don't text and drive. Brought to you by the Kentucky Office of Highway Safety.
Skipper! Skipper!
Call him Skipper!
I don't know what you mean by Skipper.
Skipper? Skipper! Skipper!
Skipper! Hey, Skipper! What? Don't skip the life jackets. Life jackets. You're right. Thanks for the reminder.
Water officers everywhere remind you, your life jackets got your back.
And the backing of everyone that wants you to come home alive.
So Skipper, don't skip the life jackets. A public service message from your Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. You are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. We're back. My name is Charlie Bagman. There are people you work with that have colorful careers, may have the same job you do, but there's always another side to them. Try it sometime. Start a conversation with these 4 words. Tell me about yourself. You can be amazed at the answers you get. That's what happened to me as I was introduced to this new writer for Kentucky Afield magazine, Kevin Kelly. He is our guest today. You are a fan of baseball, Kevin, but you are also a fan of fishing. Fill me in.
Love to musky fish. My dad introduced me to musky fishing on Cave Run, and you really enjoy that. It's frustrating at times because those are elusive fish, but really enjoy the challenge that they present an angler. But yeah, I'd like to just be on the water.
As much as you've traveled in baseball, you know you're not going to travel as much. Well, Kentucky sort of split up. In Western Kentucky, they're St. Louis Cardinals fans. Mm-hmm. You got Cincinnati fans for, I guess, a big chunk of Kentucky. And maybe in Southern Kentucky, I'm guessing listeners in Somerset might be Atlanta Braves fans. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there are Braves fans in Kentucky. Absolutely.
So you get to travel some in Kentucky. Where all do you travel with this new job?
I'm going to Lake Cumberland on Friday for the Hatchery Creek groundbreaking dedication. A couple weeks ago, I was up at a Dare WMA with John McGregor, turning over tin, looking for snakes.
Yeah.
Just this past Friday, Lee McClellan, who's a writer for the magazine, he's doing a Blue Water Trails for the fall issue of the magazine on South Fork Licking River. So we floated the South Fork of Licking River last Friday up in Harrison County. But it's taken me kind of regionally for now, but it's going to branch out. I'm pretty sure of that. You have one of those jobs. You are Kevin Kelly for a living. It sounds like your life is fun. Yeah. All my friends are jealous. And they should be. They should be. When we started this program a little while ago, we were talking about Kentucky Afield magazine. From combat to conservation, new officers bring military backgrounds to their jobs by Kevin Kelly, and it was talking about conservation officers coming into law enforcement for wildlife, bringing with them experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. Probably pretty common these days. And, of course, you started it off. That's where we got into the talk about the Reds. Nobody ever talks about Cincinnati Reds in Kentucky Afield magazine, but you made it happen because he was on patrol one night, and you talked about him. Him is Michael Hudson, who is a new conservation officer with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. That had to be an interesting boat ride. Were you on the water with Officer Hudson? What did you learn? Because what you bring to this article with a picture of the baseball stadium in the background and working in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's a far-reaching story. It is. It was really, I spent one night on the water, them patrolling. It was Officer Hudson and Officer Chris Fawcett patrolling the Ohio River. And what I learned was these conservation officers do not know what they're going to encounter when they come up on something. They just don't know. It is a dangerous job, and as unfortunately we've seen, it's potentially life-threatening job at times.
Especially if you're on the water at night. Mm-hmm. In an area such as Covington, Newport, Kentucky, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Mm-hmm. There was the fireworks show, and that's how I got into the story. But people gather along the riverfront in their boats to watch fireworks, and
sure.
we were just getting back onto the river. We had we had to go to jail to drop 2 individuals off from early in the evening, and we were getting on the water just as the fireworks were starting, and we're motoring downriver, and the fireworks end, and all of a sudden it's just waves and waves of boats, pleasure boats, coming. We're going against the stream here, and it was dark, but I mean, these officers are trained to handle those types of situations and do so safely.
Hudson hoped that joining the military might lead to his dream job at the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. However, the competition for the job of conservation officer is fierce. You have quoted here. For the most recent class, 651 people applied for 15 spots. Physical fitness, swimming, a background check which includes interviews, a polygraph exam, a drug screening, psychological assessment. I mean, being a conservation officer isn't something you walk out of high school and just do.
No, you've got to be dedicated to it. You've got to really want to do it.
They have absolutely the best men and women on the job. Mm-hmm. That's impressive. 3% of the initial applicants you've pointed out here make that final cut. Officer Hudson was one of those.
And he's an impressive individual. I don't know if you've seen him, but stature-wise, he cuts an imposing figure. He's big, very big.
You don't want to mess with him.
No, former football player.
With experience in Iraq.
Yes.
He came home alive.
Yes. Yeah.
Talking about the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Conservation Group, the conservation officers, you quoted here, it was grueling being away from home for 6 months. Even though he had done a year-long tour overseas in battle, the 6 months being a conservation officer was even worse. What did he say to you? He says, Kevin, I don't print this, but...
No, I didn't get it.
What did he say?
I just heard that the training was difficult, that it's, mental and physical toughness is required.
He's now in Gallatin County. Now, we're telling on him, and Mike, Officer Hudson doesn't know we were going to talk about this, but after all, it is in print, it's in the magazine, it's no secret. Mm-hmm. Assigned now to Gallatin County. Mm-hmm. That is one county south of Boone County, where you lived in Florence, and one county north upriver from where I grew up in Carroll County. So I know Gallatin County rather well. The city there is Warsaw. Yep. The Kentucky Speedway is in Gallatin County, and there was used to be a restaurant, I'm informed now is now closed, but it was one of the finest anywhere on earth, called the Bun Boy.
I've never heard of that one.
It was in Warsaw. It was sort of like a Frisch's, sort of like Cincinnati-style chili with the cinnamon and the spaghetti in it. Mm-hmm. They knew how to do it right.
Really?
You have written more than just this one article for the magazine. What's on your drawing board?
This for the fall issue, I've got I'm working on an article, kind of a profile on John McGregor, our herpetologist. I'll
remind you who John is if you've ever heard our show on Halloween. He's the snake guy. He's the turtle guy, the frog fella. The state's foremost authority on herps, herpetology.
We went out for 3 or 4 hours the other week. I think I mentioned it early on at a Dare WMA, and just the fearlessness, is really strong. He's pulling up, tin and just old plywood, and no fear about what's underneath. And here I am. I'm ready to take off. I'm ready to bolt. But it's fascinating to hear what he's experienced out in the field over the years. So it's.
I look forward to that article. Do you have a title you're working on?
I don't, not yet. But we will once it starts coming together a little bit more. We will. but I'll also be doing a hunting season outlook. That'll be in the fall issue of the magazine as well, and we'll be doing some other things as well.
Speaking of hunting season outlook, when you took the job with Kentucky Afield magazine, you sort of inherited a duty from a former writer, used to be with the Lexington Herald-Leader, another newspaper fella, Art Lander. And I remember having Art Lander on this program because he did the Kentucky Hunting and Trapping Guide. Now, say to do that, he means make sure all the information in it is accurate and it's well presented and it's laid out so that it's easily understood. You sort of inherited that from Art. Mm-hmm. And I have in my hand the Kentucky Hunting and Trapping Guide for July 14 through February of 15. And you were telling me in your office the other day that you went through and made some even more revisions than what Mr. Lander did in his years doing it. And if it's blue, it's new. What's new this year in the Kentucky Hunting and Trapping Guide?
Several items for deer hunting and licensing and bear hunting, fur bearers. Kind of runs the gamut. I can run through the list? Or?
We do. In fact, if we could just quickly page through here for the balance of the show and talk about what's new. So before you go, because there's a lot of hunting seasons in Kentucky come September 1. Licenses and permits on page 4 and 5. Pheasant quota hunt permits are not transferable.
Basically, you can't, if you don't use it, you can't give it to somebody else to use.
Couldn't give it to your son, couldn't give it to your buddy. It's for you only. Menifee County is now assigned to Zone 4. And there was a page in this. On page 11, I said, that looks like somebody was just scribbling here. There's a map of Kentucky under the deer hunting heading, and the Menifee is outlined in blue. Who's been drawing in this magazine? And there was a zone change.
Yes.
So that was changed from a 3 to a 4 to make it more restrictive to help out the deer herd there.
Yes.
Help it grow some.
Yes.
Here again, if you're looking through this, and you should have one of these, if not two, just so that you know what's going on before you go.
They're available wherever licenses are sold, but you can also, if you have internet access, you can go onto our website, fw.ky.gov, and download a copy of the guide.
Is the PDF version of what I'm holding available to get on your phone or online?
Yes, it is. And
everything is still highlighted in blue if it's new?
Yes. Yep.
That'd be easier just to have if you have web access wherever you hunt. Dang, the music is playing, Kevin. We've got to take a break. Kevin Kelly with Kentucky Afield magazine is my guest. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Charlie Bagman back on Kentucky Afield Radio, and our final few with a man who you know if you read Kentucky Afield magazine. If not, you'll certainly become familiar with the name Kevin Kelly, a new writer for that publication, and along with your tasks as the newbie, Kevin, you were also given the charge to update the fall hunting guide. You have put something in here in the front that says, know the law. So please read this guide carefully to prevent being cited for a violation. Make sure you understand Kentucky's hunting and trapping laws before you go. And if you need help, here's a number to call and the hours you can call.
Those calls go to the information center, and the people who answer the phones in the information center are extremely knowledgeable about what's in the guide and about regulations. If they don't know, they will get you to somebody who does know and can get you the answer.
They are the authority.
The main priority is if you call with a question, we will try our best to get it answered for you. And if they don't know, like I said, they'll get you to somebody who will have the answer for you.
Seth Stewart runs the information center for the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Group, and I've talked to him. He's going to be on the show, and I'm going to ask him such things. What do you have to do to sit there and be briefed? What kind of notes you have to take? What kind of quizzes are you given on it by people that are in the know, the staff attorneys or the biologists that suggest these changes to the commission? Do they quiz you before you're able to go forth and tell the world or anybody who may call you?
I haven't talked a whole lot in depth about what the most common calls, but I'm sure there are common calls that they get around particular seasons. And if you answer one question enough times, then you'll know it know it by heart.
But those fellows are good. The men and women on that team for the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Information Center, I've called them myself. Mm-hmm. It's amazing what they know.
It is.
Anything else about the guide that you particularly would like to make sure that's pointed out because it's been updated?
Changes from last year's guide. The deer quota hunt choices are available on page 26. People may be interested in that. And we've kind of revamped the public lands hunting section to include a region-by-region look at what you can, what you're allowed to do on WMAs and by region. And we break it down by each WMA. So that's a little bit different there, but I hope people check that out.
There is a colorful chart here, Bluegrass region, Green River region, areas of the state. That's something new that you personally have added to the guide, and that's this year, right?
Mm-hmm. Along with our graphic designer, Adrian Yancey, we worked to develop the color-coded charts with a lot of cooperation from the field staff from each individual region.
Let's just pick the Green River region, sort of in west central Kentucky. You got the Barren River Lake Wildlife Management Area, Big Rivers, Higginson Henry, Nolan River Lake Wildlife Management Area, and the list goes on, Peabody WMAs out there. And then it goes on and it says what you can and can't do. Mm-hmm. Deer, archery, muzzleloader, gun, youth firearms, squirrel, rabbit, grouse. And it'll tell you, is it open for that or isn't it? Mm-hmm. And I mean, that works out. I can't remember quite what it was in years past in the guide, but this certainly makes it easy to understand.
Yeah, and I think it helps. It helps if you're looking for a place to go hunting. Okay, if I'm in Butler County, Ohio County, what's near me in the Green River region? Well, here are the WMAs. Here's phone number if you want to call. I would even suggest just calling the WMA just to make sure nothing has changed from the guide. Since then, just be as safe as possible to make sure everything's good to go. But I think you look region by region, and I think it's pretty neat to be able to see what's where.
I'm impressed with what you've done in this year's guide.
Thank you. I do take it seriously because a lot of people do rely on it, and you try to be from being a newspaper reporter, you try to be as accurate as possible.
Yeah. But before we close the show, I've got 2 or 3 questions. I guess one, I'll go ahead and ask you now. Do you text and drive?
Me, no.
Okay. Takes care of question 1. 2, these last 2 are sort of baseball trivia things.
Okay.
The original name of the Cincinnati Bengals.
You stumped me.
Cincinnati Reds.
Really? I didn't.
Google it.
All right.
I think I'm telling you accurately.
Okay.
A friend of mine at the YMCA where I attend is a Mets fan. And he wears this New York Mets cap. And the colors are blue and orange. And I said, John, why are the colors of the Mets blue and orange? Do you know?
No.
Because they represent the teams that left New York. The Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants. The Giants were orange, Dodgers were blue. They went out west. And so the new expansion team that went in, the Mets, assumed the colors of the 2 teams that left New York.
Never knew that, but that makes sense.
Yeah, you could probably ask me baseball questions all day and I'd lose every one of them. Is there one on your mind? So, well, I've got to ask him this.
I'll just ask you a question. What's the most memorable moment from a baseball game you have attended?
It was the game in Baltimore's Memorial Park, and they were playing the Minnesota Twins. If you've ever seen Tom Cruise's movie, A Few Good Men, and Cruise is a big baseball fan, and he walks around playing the attorney, and he's listening to the ball game. Cal Ripken Jr. was a part of that game. His father was the manager, and his brother Billy was like the second baseman, and they came back in the 9th to beat Minnesota. And they played a snippet of that game in the movie. I was at that game.
That's pretty cool.
That was cool. Seemed like it was 1991 or 2.
Yeah. Were you watching the movie and just all of a sudden you're like, hey, wait a minute.
I was there. Yeah. It was a thrill of it. I was there. And yours?
My favorite baseball memory. Not necessarily a play, but I went to a World Series game in St. Louis. A buddy of mine that I grew up with was a pitcher for the Cardinals. And the Cardinals went to the World Series. So my dad and I traveled out to St. Louis and were in the upper deck at Busch Stadium and, watching my friend pitch in the World Series. That is cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I think we've taken the show today and knocked it out of the park.
So,
Kevin Kelly, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great.
Again, watch for Kevin's stories in Kentucky Afield magazine. We are out of time. I want to thank Kevin Kelly for stopping by the show. I'm Charlie Baglan, inviting you to join us in a week, and we will go inside outdoors again, right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.